In this lesson, we'll be looking at configuring your display settings. The computer component you work with the most is the display. Windows 10 has many display-related settings that are intended to make the display as comfortable as possible for each individual. The display interfaces with our eyes, and everyone has different vision, so the display settings that are comfortable for one person may not be optimal for the next person. For this reason, you should set up the display to be easy for your eyes to use. Windows initially detects and configures your display using the native display resolution for the display screen or screens that are connected to your device. Windows will show this as the recommended resolution because it can detect that this is the resolution the screen is made to use. While this may be fine in most situations, you may want to tweak things. You'll find there's many settings for managing your display in the Settings app. We're going to open up to System, and Display is the first area shown. At the top, you might see a tool for selecting and rearranging your displays, like the one shown here. If you have a single screen, this will not appear. You can actually use this tool up here to rearrange your displays in relation to one another. Use the Identify tool here to make sure you're working with the correct screen. Now I can select and I can drag my screens around to reflect the position this screen has in relation to the other one. You'll generally need to rearrange your screens to allow your mouse cursor to naturally flow from one screen to the other. After making a change, you'll need to apply it to make this configuration stick, or you can cancel the change to stick with your original layout. When working with multiple displays, the settings below will be related to the screen that's selected up here at the top. Now on some devices, you may have options related to brightness, and a lower brightness would naturally extend your battery life. You might also see a few options for color. Now for those that work with images and do photo editing, they may be especially concerned with color accuracy and calibration. Now, depending on how important this is to you, you may actually want to check with your manufacturer of the display to see if they provide specific color profiles for your monitor. Now, Windows 10 includes both a calibration tool, which will walk you through adjustments that can be made for your display, and a color management tool that will help you manage your color profiles. Most people will never need these tools. However, for those that really need to be careful when working with colors, it's good to know the tools are there. A newer setting in Windows 10 is the addition of HD color settings. Now, if your device supports it, Windows can improve the way high dynamic range content is displayed. And this includes videos, photos, and apps. HDR can really impact the range used for dark or bright scenes, and your display in particular would need to support HDR. Under Scale and Layout, we have tools that are related to our resolution. Let's just talk for a second about resolution. What you're looking at when you look at your display is actually composed of pixels. And as you no doubt know, images that have a very high pixel count are sharper, and it's a lot easier on your eyes. Now, lower pixel counts make it easier for your eyes to see the pixels that make up the image, and this can be distracting. Because your eyes see the pixels, it has to work harder to process the actual image. The numbers under resolution here refer to the number of columns and rows of pixels that are used on the selected display. You'll see screens described with native resolutions like 1024 by 768, 1366 by 768, or 1920 by 1080. Now the first number indicates your columns, the second indicates the number of rows of pixels that are used for that screen. When you need things to be bigger on the screen, some might try to reduce the resolution, which will make things bigger. But this technique also results in things looking a little blurry because you're making your pixels more discernible. Now that's why we have a setting here that lets us make everything appear larger on the screen. Use this drop-down to change your scale, and this will make everything larger without making things blurry. Now depending on your display, there may be quite a lot of range here for your scaling choices. Even though we don't need to change the actual resolution to make things easier to see, you may have good reasons to change your screen resolution. Perhaps a display driver is not correctly using the native resolution for a display, or maybe you need to temporarily change the resolution when working with certain applications. To make changes to your resolution, select a different set from the list of available resolutions. Now I can't change my resolution while I'm recording this, but what would happen is that the display would be modified, and a pop-up window would give me two choices. I must select Keep Changes if I like the new resolution and I want to keep it, or I can select Revert. Now, if I do nothing, Windows will automatically revert the display after a few seconds just as a precaution. Now, sometimes a bad resolution choice makes it just impossible to see and then select Revert. I've had this occur a few times over the years. So by automatically reverting, Windows prevents us from getting stuck with an unusable display configuration. Under Orientation, I can also change the screen orientation, and this can be handy for a desktop display that's been swiveled vertically. In some cases, this could be grayed out. However, you can generally change this setting between landscape, portrait, and you can select a flip version for either of these. Incidentally, you should remember that with tablets, they generally will change the screen orientation dynamically as you turn your tablet. Now you have a rotation lock button in your Action Center that lets you lock or unlock that screen rotation. When working with multiple displays, a couple of additional important settings are available. Scrolling down here to multiple displays, I can change how any additional screens are used. Generally, you'll want to extend your displays, and this allows you to spread your open applications out across the extra screen real estate. Now, in some situations, you may want to duplicate the display. So if I'm working on one display and I want to have my second screen show others what's happening, perhaps I'm in a conference or in a classroom setting, I would choose Duplicate these displays. You can also work with just a single display if you need to. Now I can also indicate which screen is my primary display with this checkbox. By default, the primary display has your main taskbar and the notifications area. So again, make sure you have selected the correct screen up at the top, and then you can enable that one to be your primary display. Now in a separate lesson, we've looked at ease of access, and I just wanted to mention that when we're talking about display settings, you should be aware that in ease of access, there are several display-related settings. You can further tweak from here your scale, and we're going to look closer in another lesson on making text bigger on the screen by itself. You can also use color filters and high contrast settings. Now both of these can make a big difference for some people that struggle with seeing things that are on their display. Finally, you may find that your device has display-related software that's been provided by the manufacturer or that's included with a graphics card. For example, NVIDIA and AMD often include their own control interfaces for their video drivers. Now these interfaces are fine to use. They generally can be used as alternatives to the Windows settings that we've looked at in this lesson, and in many cases they actually provide a deeper set of configuration settings. In this lesson, we've looked at configuring your display settings. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.